Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another JVS movie review. Today, we are bringing you a review of the latest horror movie from Netflix, Fear Street 1984. And I'm going to quickly give you background before we get into Synopsis and the cast. Fear Street was a series of books by R.L. Stine in the 90s that I love. I love R.L. Stine for one. From Goosebumps to Superstitions, which was his first adult novel, to the Fear Street series. So this was a series of books by R.L. Stine that Netflix got the rights to and decided to not necessarily adapt the books, but to put their own spin on the lore and the stories of the books. So when we get here with Fear Street 1994, I think after this we have 1978 and then like 1606. Like it jumps from three different things to give you a trilogy of stories, and this 1994 Fear Street is the first of the trilogy. So here's the quick synopsis for this one. In 1994, a group of teenagers discover that the terrifying events that have haunted their town for generations may all be connected, and that they may be the next targets. I love the way that is. Starring Kiana, Madeira, Olivia Welch, and Benjamin Flores Jr. So let's start off by saying this. This is a very fun movie. This is an extremely fun movie. I didn't go into it necessarily expecting the best. I'm not gonna lie about it, because I didn't necessarily know how they were going to adapt this series. My fear was they were going to make it the teenage soapy CW-esque type of horror show, which I didn't want to see for Fear Street. And instead, what you get is a horror movie that is very reminiscent of the good mid-90s horror films. Like the opening of Fear Street, as we see a young girl in a video store talking to her friend in a store that's like a Hot Topic, I'm assuming. And then mayhem breaks loose. It felt like the beginning of the first Scream, where it's just plotted so perfectly and set up so well to show just the mysterious nature of the killer, but also the relentless pursuit of the killer. It really works well. So when you start off that way and then you get introduced to the world that they're going to bring you in here in that fashion at the beginning, you're in for the ride. Especially again, if you love the mid-90s horror style, because that's what, again, naming it 94 should have been the key element, that that's the mode they were going to go to here. But we've seen other films attempt to capture a moment from the past and fail at it. Here we get them completely catching the moment, the feel, the vibe of everything that was a 90s horror film. Throughout this entire film, it feels like a 90s horror film. Down to the kids' reactions at times. Feels like a 90s horror film, but then they get the sensibilities of kids in this era, which I know it sounds weird and it kind of throws you off a little bit, down to the lesbian relationship that they have in this movie. Something that back in the 90s was possibly frowned upon, but is openly accepted now. So we get the parents who are not overly accepting of that relationship, and that's between Olivia's character and Kiana's character. And you see the parents not overly being okay with that situation, but still the way it's shot, the way they present it, it presents it in a more modern way, but still in the 94 time frame, down to the dueling towns and everything else. So as it begins, again, we get from that killing scene, and then we are introduced to Kiana's character, her brother, who is played by the young Mr. Flores here. And we're just getting introduced to all the characters and their town and the myths and the news. It really works well in setting up what you're going to get moving forward here, before it becomes an all-out slasher fest. But again, it became a 90s slasher fest. And if you remember the 90s slasher fest, whether it be a Scream, I Know What You Did Last Summer, all of those type of films, while they were technically slasher films, they weren't as gory as the ones we have now. It was way more about setup and execution than it was about gore and cheap thrills. And this one feels that way throughout. All the teens are fun in this movie. So it's a whole group of them, and every one of them are fun. Every character is believable here, except maybe the cop who is supposed to be trying to figure out what's going on here. Again, but he comes across as a '90s cop. When I saw him, I thought of Jason Goes to Hell. The cops in that type of movie, where they're picking up on what's going on, but not picking up fast enough to actually help the teens do anything. And I like those sensibilities are perfect for this type of film, and it works in spades here. Something that I think everyone can enjoy and will enjoy from this. Now, down to the direction, the plot. Again, adapting it from a book that everyone knows, a best-selling series, has to be difficult. But to execute it as well as they do is amazing. Amazing. This is one of the best horror movies that I've seen this year, and I've seen lots of horror movies this year, especially recently with The Purge coming out and this coming out at the same weekend. And this is leaps and bounds better than The Purge. So that kind of threw me off, because again, I was not expecting this much from Fear Street, but it gives you everything that you want out of a horror film. So, Fear Street, brought to you by Netflix. It debuts Friday, June the 2nd. Which is going to be a huge, busy, big weekend. Out of a possible 10, I'm going to give Fear Street 1994 a 9 out of 10. This is almost the perfect type of retro horror movie. It works on so many levels. Again, the characters are all believable. The children, teenage characters in this, not children, the teenage characters in this movie are extremely believable in everything that they do. I dig the point that you do highlight the romance between the two young women in this film, and just to bring it back to that point where people weren't overly accepting of it and them having to hide it from people, and then have that play into everything that happens with the town and why the town is haunted. And my guy, the young Mr. Flores, playing a perfect black geek in this movie. Before they became blurs, they were like just black geeks, and he plays it perfectly in this movie. Again, almost every element of this movie works. It builds up the proper amount of suspense, the proper amount of horror, while still giving you just enough gore to push you through, to let you understand like this is something you need to see. So again, check it out. Let us know what you think. This has been another JVS movie review. Peace, people.